We'll talk more about the Eagles' offense, Miles Sanders, and more right now with Emory Hunt, college football, NFL analyst, draft guru. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. As all guests, he joins us right now on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Emory, how you doing on this Friday?
I'm doing fine, Josh. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you jumping on. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because one of the conversations we've been having throughout the week is about Miles Sanders, the Eagles running back. And to me, one of the things that stands out about him is the fact that people overlook that he was the third wide receiver on the team last year in terms of catches and yards. He was a guy that was top 10 in the NFL in total yards. This is a guy who has already shown in just 11 starts in the NFL that he can be that multi-dimensional running back. So off the top, I want to get your perspective on what do you think of Miles Sanders and what he can do in the NFL and in the Eagles offense?
Yeah, I think you hit on all of the key points. You look at Miles Sanders, and Eagles fans will appreciate this. You can easily envision Brian Westbrook and what he brought to the table under Andy Reid and that Eagles offense, a guy that was your quintessential dual threat in the backfield. Yes, he can run inside, run outside. He's a terrible matchup for linebackers because he's so quick and elusive. And also he can catch football deep down the field, not just your standard flares, flat screens, and swing routes. He's a true downfield threat in the passing game. So to me, he's the new age version of the Eagles' Brian Westbrook, and I think that's what they can expect for him to bring to the table now that he's going to be the full-fledged starter in the backfield.
You mentioned Brian Westbrook. You look back, though, when Westbrook was in Philadelphia, the Eagles have a better tight end now than they did back then. You could argue the Eagles have some better receivers now than they did back then. You know, back then you talk about guys like, Chad Lewis and L.J. Smith at tight end, and then receivers like Reggie Brown and Todd Pinkston. So if you think about it, if you have a player similar to Brian Westbrook but with a better supporting cast, shouldn't we expect more of this offense?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, when you have all those weapons around a player like Miles Sanders, maybe you don't have to expect him to do certain things. You don't have to put him in a situation where he's going to be the third leading receiver on the team. Maybe he takes a step back as far as that is concerned because they've added talent at wide receiver and they're expecting guys to step up and take some of that workload off of Sanders so he can concentrate on being a really good tailback that also catches the football very well.
When you look at Miles Sanders also, I think one thing people overlook is the fact that he only really had 1 year to show out at Penn State because he was behind arguably the best running back in the NFL and Saquon Barkley. So what is Miles Sanders' ceiling in the NFL, Emory?
Well, I think because of, him last year, 2 years ago at Penn State being the full-time guy for the first time last as with any rookie getting up to speed on the NFL, consistency of the NFL speed and athleticism and strength and the preparation that you need. Remember, college football players only playing about 13 games. That's an extra, 7 games in the NFL when you count preseason. So that's why you had that rookie wall. Plus, he was splitting time with Jordan Howard, and, he had his own injury issues, a little bit throughout the course of his rookie season. So all of that just kind of combined into what we saw last year. But now he's coming off of a season where he got reps. He's going to be the full-fledged starter. He's healthy going into the season, and we should see a lot of what we saw at Penn State from him.
Emory Hunt joining us here on the Boardwalk on a hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Again, make sure you're following him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan for all your NFL and college football analysis. Emory, so Miles Sanders, we know what he can do, but what about the rest of the offense? How does the rest of the offense complement him, and how does he complement what the other guys do?
Well, if you think about him being the third receiver on the team last year, that's a team that didn't have Jalen Reagor out of TCU, so you add him to the mix. You expect J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to take huge strides in year two. He's still a very good receiver, so you take some of the receiving options away from Sanders. And when you look at the offense, we talked about the tight end position. They're there. I think they're better at receiver than many people are giving them credit for. And when you add the fact that they got backs now that can, that don't need volume, that can be successful. We're talking about Sanders and Boston Scott, Corey Clement. Those are guys that don't need the volume of carries that a Jordan Howard needed to be successful. So yeah, they have a lot of good options on the offense. Now it's just up to Wentz to continue to play his game, play like he played the back end of the season, and for the offensive line to continue to be one of the stalwarts in the division as far as what they do is blocking is concerned. Obviously, a lot of eyes will be on Andre Dillard.
Emory, you mentioned Jalen Reagor. There's a lot of reports out there. The expectation is that Reagor would be the receiver opposite of Deshaun Jackson week one, and they'd have him in the X slot. So explain to the audience a little bit about what the responsibility of the X receiver is in an offense like Philadelphia.
Well, you're responsible for beating the team's top defensive back each and every week one-on-one. You have to be able to win those matchups. You got to be able to be good off the line of scrimmage. You have to be able to win, against bump press. And for a rookie, that's a tough ask, man. And so that's why you see a lot of rookies tend to either start slow at receiver or they move them inside to the slot or as a Z, which is a flanker. So that way you can put them in motion. You can kind of take away them having to get off bump press unless that's something that he excelled at in college. With Reagor, if he's going to be playing the X, that means they think highly of his ability at the line of scrimmage, and they also think of highly of his ability to win one-on-one against the team's number 1 or 1-8 type corner.
Do you think Reagor potentially, because he's being thrust in there so quickly, that he may be one of those guys who maybe starts a little slowly because we don't have the OTAs and the mini camps ahead of training camp this year?
Yeah, and again, you have to factor in all of that. Plus, you have to factor in playing a receiver at the NFL level is a lot different than playing it in the Big 12. In the Big 12, you're throwing a lot and you're seeing a lot of coverage and you're being asked to read coverage on the fly. But, you have to make those decisions a lot quicker because of the hash marks that are in the NFL. It's a lot closer. So things have to happen fast. The ball has to come out fast. The pressure comes quicker. And you have to make your decision as a receiver a lot quicker. So as soon as he can get up to speed on that part of the game, the mental speed of the game, then we know he can do what he can do physically because we saw it all throughout the course of his career at TCU.
Also, one thing that's been discussed as well is Greg Ward. Greg Ward obviously didn't get too much shine until the end of the year last year, and a lot of people expect him to be the primary slot receiver coming into this year. What do you think of Greg Ward, and what would be your expectations for him heading into 2020?
He's a great example of what happens when you allow guys to develop. Greg Ward, Shelton Gibson, former Eagle, then came back after he was, cut from the Browns or snatched off the Browns practice squad. You have those guys that you develop in-house that have grown into, contributors. And I think because he was able to contribute last year and came up big in a big way, his confidence is going to be through the roof. And he's another one to keep an eye on. I would also keep an eye on undrafted rookie Menashe Bailey out of Morgan State, another one that has upside, the athleticism to really take the top off of a defense and a catch and run type guy. So when the Eagles have shown that they're giving guys time to develop and work through their system, that's why I'm high on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in year 2, because we've seen what this coaching staff can do with guys like Ward and guys like Gibson.
Now, you mentioned J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. A lot of Eagle fans are down on him because of last year, but the reports have come out this offseason that he was dealing with a lot of injuries last year, and now we know coming into 2020, there's a new wide receiver coach. They've made some adjustments on the coaching staff. So what can J.J. Arcega-Whiteside do for the Eagles in 2020?
He could be a lot like Alshon Jeffrey as far as being that high post player, the guy that you want to play, above the rim with inside the red zone, a lot like what he did at Stanford. And again, it's just an adjustment for a lot of receivers coming from the college level to the pro level and how you get off bump press, how you are able to see the field in the constant changing picture. It's your pre-snap look won't be what your during the snap look is going to be. And a lot has to go into that. It's easier for a running back, easier for a lineman, as opposed to a receiver or a corner and quarterback. So I think you're going to see a guy that's going to play a lot like what he did with the Cardinals in college and, doing a great job inside the red zone and being a nice chain mover type receiver for this offense.
So with all that being said, we talked about the receivers, about different guys. How do the Eagles' offense compare to the rest of the offenses in the NFC?
because you have to factor in, their head coach and what they do well. And, I'm a big fan of Doug Peterson and what he does. And I think they have a nice, well-oiled machine. They can match up against anybody. They got size. They have explosiveness. They have tight end depth. And the cool part is when you look at tight ends, teams don't have one, and the Eagles have two. And so that's already a matchup problem. It helps them out in the run game. They do a great job of blocking both those guys. And they got good backs that are interchangeable that can also catch the football. So it's an offense that provides a lot of versatility, a lot of athleticism. But if they want to play the big boy game, they can play the big boy game because they have the offensive line. They have those big receivers that can win above the rim, and they have a quarterback that's very tough to bring down to the pocket.
So with all that being said, then why do you think people are sometimes down on the Eagles? Because it feels like when people talk about the best offenses, especially in the NFC, it's Michael Thomas with the Saints, it's Julio Jones with the Falcons, Mike Evans with the Bucks. But the Eagles don't have that number one primary receiver. So do you need that number one primary receiver, or is it more important for a team to have balance on their offense?
I think it's more important for a team to be, healthy. And, when you're healthy and you're out there consistently, then you're playing as a group. You're going to have much better offensive output. And that's been an issue with the Eagles. Rarely have we seen them all in one piece. 1 week it's maybe Jeffrey is out. Okay, then he's back. Then Deshaun Jackson is out. Then he's back. Then maybe, Ertz is nursing something, or Goddard is nursing something. Sanders is out maybe with a shoulder or dinged up a little bit, maybe within the game or something like that. So you don't see the full offense out there consistently each and every week as you do with some teams. And, that's what happens when you have explosive offenses. A lot of times the guys just out there consistently. Think about the Rams back when, they had Gurley out there and Brandon Cooks and Woods and Cooper Kupp. All of those guys were on the field consistently. You saw the best version of Jared Goff, and they ended up getting to a Super Bowl. The Eagles, to me, have the names on paper. We've seen them produce at times out there individually on the field, but if they can get those guys to play for full 16, then you can start to talk about the Eagles' offense being one of the better offenses in the NFL.
Emory, let me ask you about a few other teams around the NFL. Let's stay in the NFC East first with the Cowboys. One of my concerns with the Cowboys is the fact that there's no more Travis Frederick there. You got a brand new guy coming into center. How much is that going to be an issue for the Cowboys in 2020, is the fact that you're bringing in a brand new anchor guy in the middle of that line?
It can be an issue, especially since we're in the COVID-19 era where you didn't have those OTAs, rookie mini camps. But I do like Tyler Beatis of Wisconsin. He was my number one center in the draft. So I think they can go from Travis Frederick to Beatis and be just fine. I think their offense, to me, is probably the best in the NFC East.
Todd Gurley is now in Atlanta. I think that he's potentially an upgrade over Devonta Freeman. But what can we actually expect from Gurley at this point in his career?
But you just hope he's healthy. And, that's the thing, because we hadn't seen him healthy in the last couple of years. A healthy Todd Gurley really transforms that offense playing on that turf because they have explosive weapons out there on the perimeter. They have a guy at tight end now in Hayden Hurst that can really be a good catch and run guy. And their offensive line should be better, especially on the right side with those rookies that are now going to be in their second year, and Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. So I think if he's healthy, that could be an offense to keep an eye on in the NFC.
When you look at also in the NFC South, we know about Tom Brady. But how do the other pieces fit together? Because you're adding Gronk to an already deep tight end group with Brate and Howard. We have Evans, you have Godwin. You got a lot of parts there. So how are all those pieces you think going to fit together in Tampa?
I think they're going to fit together really well. My concern would be, which Tom Brady are you going to get? Are you going to get the one we saw last year? Because that's not a very good quarterback. And we don't even know what Rob Gronkowski can play like after being away for a year and losing all that weight. We don't know what that Gronk looks like. Will he still be able to block like he did when he was in his heyday? And can he still run like he did back in 2018? So again, there's a lot of unknowns there with Tampa Bay. On paper, it looks great. Do they have the running game now? I know they added Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt. Ronald Jones, from the videos he's posted online, he's bulked up a bit, but what does that look like? So there's still some unknowns there, but on paper, you still can be excited about what they bring to the table. They weren't a bad team last year. Jameis just couldn't stop turning the ball over, but you saw what he did when he didn't turn the ball over. Threw for over 5,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns.
Speaking of unknowns, it feels like the entire NFC North is full of unknowns. You no Stephon Diggs anymore in Minnesota. Aaron Rodgers, they really didn't do much of anything to improve the offense around in this offseason. Okay, you bring in Nick Foles to Chicago, but I'm not fully sure how much that fixes certain other problems. And then Detroit just feels like as long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, they have a chance. So who really is the better constructed offense in the NFC North?
I think each one of those teams brings something different to the table. Detroit's offense, I think, will be significantly better this year because they got DeAndre Swift out of Georgia, finally giving them a running back, a game breaker at the position since Barry Sanders. They haven't had that, and he is that type of back that can really help their offense out. Chicago has pieces on offense. They have explosive players. They just don't have the right quarterback. You look at Green Bay. They have long, angular receivers that can really get downfield, but it looks like they want to be a running team, which is why they invested heavily on the offensive line and also doubled down with what they did in drafting A.J. Dillon. So maybe there's a philosophy change going on. In Minnesota, they have good tight end depth. The offensive line played better last year. We know they have Dalvin Cook, an explosive running back in the backfield, and they got some good receivers despite losing Stephon Diggs, and Kirk Cousins played efficient football. So each one has a chance to be the best offense in the division. We just don't know which part of their weaknesses will become a strength this season.
We know one of the biggest stories of the offseason was DeAndre Hopkins going to Arizona. But did Arizona do enough with their offensive line to make up for some of the issues last year?
Well, you hope so. I mean, you bring in Marcus Gilbert. You draft Josh Jones out of Houston. You got some guys that you had last year that should develop and play well, like Lamont Galliard out of Georgia and Josh Miles out of Oregon State. So you've made the effort, and so we'll see. That's the biggest thing. You wonder if they bring in J.R. Sweezy. They were able to get a good contract with DJ Humphrey, so he's happy with his contract. So there's some reasons to believe that they did enough. But to me, it's up to Kyler Murray to do his part to not get himself sacked. I thought he took a lot of sacks last year that weren't on the offensive line.
Speaking of a quarterback, one more for you, Emory, that we always have questions about, I feel like, is Jared Goff. It feels like from year to year, we have these expectations of him to grow and develop, and sometimes you watch him in games, and one game he'll look like, man, he's really focused, and another game he looks lost. So what version of Jared Goff do we expect to see in 2020?
Well, I think let's say, what I think they're going to do offensively as far as running the football, they're going to probably take the ball out of Goff's hands. Last year, he threw for over 4,600 yards, but threw 626 times. So that's not winning football if you have Jared Goff throwing that much. You want to get back to what he did back in 2017 when he threw for 477 yards, but that was in conjunction with a healthy Todd Gurley. So I think with what they're going to do with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, they're going to take the ball a little bit out of his hands, rely on that run game, allow him to operate off play action, and be a little bit more efficient, because that's when he played his best ball, which is when they got to the Super Bowl.
He is Emory.
2 years after in 2018.
Sorry, he is Emory Hunt. Follow him on Twitter, F-Ball Game Plan. Always great analysis on the NFL, college football, and everything else. Check out the YouTube channel. And as all guests, he appeared here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Emory, as always, great analysis. I love picking your mind on football. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate you having me, Josh. Stay safe.